Hey everyone, Beardo here, and welcome to the continuation of the modern age history of Batman. Now, yesterday I wrapped up talking about how I felt like the Batman title itself really lacked clear direction, and I want to clarify that a little bit as I talk about the beginning of Tony Daniel's big writer-artist run for basically the majority of the rest of the modern age history of Batman here in Volume 1. During his run, you had sort of, Dick Grayson as Batman, so at least you didn't have sort of the gruff, bad Frank Miller Batman that Tony Daniel has brought us with Detective Comics. You do sort of have a mentality of that villain of the week, getting except you get a lot more A-list villains rather than like C or D-list, Dr. Phosphorus type villains. You do get a sense that there is an overarching arc. You kind of have this thing building with Black Mask and things like that. But overall, this title really lacked direction. And the reason it did is because you have Batman and Robin, where it's Dick Grayson as Batman, Damian as Robin. Dick Grayson is very much a lighthearted Batman, and Damian is this dark Robin, so you get basically a juxtaposition of the traditional Batman and Robin duo. Again, from the premise of Grant Morrison continuing to kind of, deconstruct the character and turn it on its head, continuing it in Batman and Robin. In Detective Comics, you had Batwoman, which is obviously a thing in and of itself. We all know about how awesome that is. We had Elegy going on. Eventually, Scott Snyder was going to come on to Detective Comics, and you'd have this great, how do I put it, sort of noir take on Dick Grayson as Batman, very much standing on its own and very much a unique take on what Dick Grayson would be like as Batman. However, with this, it's basically a Batman title without Robin, and unless you're sort of trying to take it in a new direction like Scott Snyder did, you just sort of end up with one half of the equation that Grant Morrison set up. Dick Grayson as Batman, honestly, on some levels, isn't all that interesting without having Damian as this unruly Robin character for him to have to deal with. And so instead you just sort of have this bland Dark Knight character with bland versions of the villains. Of course, you have sort of the grotesquity that Tony Daniel tries to bring to his art. Ironically, I mean, people say they kind of enjoy at least Tony Daniel's art. I honestly don't, because even when he's not writing, this is kind of the best he can come up with. Like, let's make their teeth bloody and give them crazy smiles and all this stuff. When he was doing Batmite and Batman R.I.P., like, you'd expect this crazy Violator villain, like, a la Spawn. Or at least that's the way I kind of envisioned if they're going to really update that character. They didn't update the character, and they never have. Batmite has always looked exactly the same, and had that exact same cartoony image that he's always had since the 50s. You bring him into the 21st century, and he still has that same exact cartoony figure. Tony Daniel makes him a little more three-dimensional when he does him in Batman, but he doesn't really reinvent the way the character looks at all, and that feels to me like a big misstep. It's a big sign of sort of, I'm gonna just be blunt, Tony Daniel's failure as an artist. So as we're getting through this arc, you sort of have stuff going on with Black Mask, stuff going on with Riddler kind of building up. Not really a whole lot to tell, and it's a pretty lackluster run before Grant Morrison hops back on the book for just a couple issues. We do get him for issue 700, which is, at this point, almost building up to the return of Bruce Wayne. And the Return of Bruce Wayne is a mini-series that Grant Morrison wrote with several guest artists and chronicles sort of how Batman comes back, because he isn't lost in hell, he's lost in time. The title of my R.I.P. video is Rotten Purgatory, not Rest in Peace, because that's what R.I.P. is supposed to have stood for. Now we start to get that information teased in Grant Morrison's mini-run here with 701 and 702, which is R.I.P. The Missing Chapter, and it basically gives us what happens between basically the conclusion of R.I.P. and the events of Final Crisis, which would have been nice to have these issues when Final Crisis was going on, so we at least knew how this happened. For whatever reason, Grant Morrison was insistent on just leaving that information out completely. I don't know if he did this as a way of sort of satisfying the fans' complaints, or if he had planned it like this all along. But ultimately, this is really just another example of, Grant Morrison's poor plotting. Because, you know, his ideas, I've said before, are really interesting on some levels, but the way they get delivered is just needs a lot of editorial work, and, you know, getting this missing chapter of R.I.P. is just sort of too little too late for me. Now, all of this is really teasing the return of Bruce Wayne, and so this not only fills in that missing chapter, but also sets up that Bruce Wayne is still alive. Now, that goes right into the next tie-in, which is 703, written by Fabian Nietzsche, and this is the beginning of the road home. Bruce Wayne is coming back, but the question is, will he be coming back to the tried and true Batman title? Why the return of Bruce Wayne was a mini-series and not just part of this Batman series really befuddles me. So the question is, now, starting with 704, and take this with you because this is the end of this video, will Bruce Wayne be back in 704? You'll have to tune in tomorrow to find out. This is Beardo signing off. Thanks for watching. I'll see you all tomorrow.